Hey everyone, welcome to No Time Like Joe Time. Before we get into the episode, a couple things I want to take care of. First, this episode was recorded when my computer was having issues, so I'm on a different computer. So if it sounds a little off, that's why. Overall quality still good, but just wanted to let you know. Also, due to some copyright issues, I've had to just put in some still clips, so that's why we don't have full videos. Just wanted you guys to be aware of that. Finally, really exciting things going on with this. I'm so grateful for everybody who's been tuning in, listening, sharing. Some of our clips have gotten over 400 views. Just a lot of stuff going on. So that's all because of you guys. Thank you. We are also, because of this, I've been able to reach out to some more guests. And for season 2, we're looking to bring on some really exciting people. Some people who have really cool podcasts going on. There's an author about book with self-deprecating, which is my favorite kind of humor, and a lot more. And you'll see some repeat guests. So really excited about all that. Again, I would have quit by now if we were getting no traction, but we are. Thank you. Keep listening, keep sharing, subscribe, and thank you for being you. I sincerely mean that. Welcome to No Time Like Joe Time. I'm your host, Joseph Boring Name Johnson. And on this podcast, we talk about media we use to escape reality, only to have it slam us back into the real world. Every week, I bring a new guest host on to look at different media and have a good old-fashioned brain melt. This week's episode, I am joined by Zack Peterson, a longtime friend and adventuring partner in my D&D campaign. I'm excited to talk to him about Attack on Titan. Oh, hey, Zack, I wasn't expecting you in so early.
Oh, well, I was able to hop on earlier, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm just writing down some packing gear I need for hiking the next week. So just give me 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Okay, I need helmet, shoulder pads, knee pads, jock strap. Can't forget that.
Wait. Why do you need all of that if you're going hiking?
Oh, Zack. Poor Zack. I'm going by a report done by We Sell Suckers Equipment. You have the highest risk of falling during hiking when you're walking. They recommend beefing up and making sure that you are really protected. And this guy is going to make sure I come out safe and sound.
That seems dumb. I feel like you have a higher chance of falling with all of that equipment on. Also, wouldn't that be really heavy and hot for hiking?
That was my thought too at first. But you see, the president of the company, Fictional Fitzgerald, said in his time talking to a senator in the lobby that the senator acknowledged that people fall down sometimes. And now I am one to listen to those in power because they know a thing or two. So that's why I'm committing to this attire.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that's just going to be a waste of money, Joe. Like, they're clearly just trying to sell you extra stuff. Like, have you ever worn any gear in the past while hiking? I mean, any of this extra gear?
No.
And have you fallen before?
No.
So seriously, you'll be fine.
You know what? You're right. I guess I'm overthinking it. I bet it will be a great hiking trip. So now probably start recording. I'll probably add us in right now because I always kind of like to talk about the bit. But you don't, so you're not going to see the fall until I show you it. But everybody watching this for the first time will have seen it. Hopefully you think it's as funny as I think it's going to be. So we'll see. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Zach.
Yeah, for sure.
So right off the bat, I have to tell everybody I'm not a huge anime fan, with the exception of My Hero Academia. But the reason why, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Zach, why I've been a little against anime. So when I was younger, growing up in the 90s, they had like all the best shows, like X-Men, Spider-Man, and all, like tons of other really cool shows. But slowly they started getting replaced by anime shows. And just anime, and I was like, I refuse to watch these.
And took away your favorites.
Yep.
Yeah.
Took away my favorites. So I was bummed. So today we're talking about Attack of Titan, which is a show you recommended.
Yeah, so I should clarify as well. So I'm probably a couple steps up the anime ladder from you then, but I wouldn't say that I'm a huge fan. I've maybe seen, I don't know, a dozen different anime or something like that. And I doubt I've watched, I can't really, well, okay, I guess I watched one relatively recently, but I rarely watch it, if at all. But like this was, when I originally saw this show, it was after I was in my 20s, I think. It was after college. And I think I watched it because it was really, really popular at the time. And I was just sort of interested in the premise.
Yeah.
But like you in the 90s, like I grew up watching Spider-Man and stuff, but then I was one of those kids that slowly let Digimon and Pokemon slip in, you know?
Yeah. That's the gateway anime.
Yeah, exactly. It's the gateway. That's right. Got my fix early.
That's how they get you. And then, so we talked a little bit about our history on the show and like what our experiences. So I will say this is my first experience with Attack on Titan. Like when Zach was like, hey, we should watch this show. I was like, oh, okay. And to be honest, I felt like Zach was torturing me a little bit.
Yeah.
He was like,
purposeful. Yeah.
And so I was a little nervous about what I was getting into, but I was very pleasantly surprised. So I will say, even if you're not an anime fan, it's still worth checking out. Unless it goes way downhill after episode 1. But it starts off strong.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, if I ever come on again, I'll choose another anime just for fun.
Yeah.
I'll be like the anime guy or something, even though I've barely seen any. But yeah, I don't know. When I first saw it, it was like after that first episode, because it's giving you like this sort of like background of stuff that happened in the past, and it sort of sets it up, you know? And I just thought the premise was really interesting. And in typical Japanese anime fashion, or at least what I'm familiar with, the more you get into the show, the more it like sucks you in, but at the same time, it becomes like way more convoluted than you expected. So you're like, oh, somehow we got to this and this. If you try to explain it to someone who has never seen it, they're just like, were you like on something when you watched this? And you're like, no, that's just the way they wrote it.
It can be two things. I was
right. So yeah, I guess it could be both. Both and.
What do you think of this trend of making live action of anime?
I was initially somewhat interested because like they had announced, I think on Netflix, they made a Death Note live action. And I thought about picking Death Note for this episode. Have you seen that one?
Nope.
Okay, I might make you watch that one sometime because that was the only one I ever got my college roommate anime hater to watch, and he got like sucked into that one. But then initially after seeing like screenshots and stuff and stills from the live action, I was just like, I don't think that that's for me. So I never watched any of the live action ones, but
Yeah.
they've continued to make them. Like I think they made Cowboy Bebop, and I think they are working on One Piece or something like that. I don't know.
I've watched One Piece actually,
Oh,
uh,
really?
live action,
But
and
never
we
the
loved.
anime?
Yeah, we loved it. We thought it was really good. So I mean, I don't know if coming from anime, what you would think of it, but like
Yeah.
it's worth a check out.
I don't know. Maybe I'll give it a try then.
I I started watching a little bit of One Piece after we watched it because it was just
It
so
made you
good.
interested enough that it was like,
Yeah,
okay, all right.
yeah, it was a really cool show. So
Well, I was watching when I was watching this episode of Attack on Titan to sort of refresh my memory. Melissa was in the room like folding laundry or something, and she was like, "Do you always watch these with?" And again, I'm not a huge anime person, so I don't know why I said it that way. But she was like, "Do you always watch these with English subtitles?" And I was like, "Yes, that's the way I've always done it." So I always listen to the Japanese
yeah,
voiceovers because the English one's just really great on me for some reson. But
yeah,
she said, "Oh, I actually like I don't think ever seen an anime in her life, but she said just being in the room, she's like." Oh, I really like the art style, the way they did the town and stuff. And I was like,
yes.
yeah, it's awesome. And she was like, but you've always been sort of drawn to that art style. And I was like, okay, that sounds a little judgmental. I don't know what you're talking about. But yes, it's pretty cool. I don't know.
I'm like picturing you being like, I'm not this huge anime guy, and then you kind of like scoot over, and there's just this wall of anime stuff.
No, there isn't. I swear.
I you
Looking
know,
behind me to see if there's anything, but you can't see anything.
so
Yeah.
I think with this, what's been fun about this podcast is that there's a very loose premise. We look at video clips and we talk about it. Sometimes they're related, sometimes they're not. But this is all, both clips are coming from the first episode.
Yeah.
And so to kind of make the world make a little bit more sense with these, I feel like we should maybe give a little bit of a description of what Attack on Titan is. Would you like to give a brief description so they can
Oh,
set
yeah,
people up?
sure. I can give it a try. So like the high concept of the show or the premise if you want to think about it that way is that there's this city, this kingdom that's sort of the last bastion of humanity, and it's inside these massive walls, and anything outside the walls is seen as like death to anyone who ever leaves because outside the walls are these massive 15-meter tall creatures, these giants called titans. And I guess 15 meters is really on the small side, which you see later in the episode, I suppose. But they don't know where these titans came from, and they don't know why they hunger for human flesh or anything like that. And some of the characters live relatively in peace, but there's this very, very strong sense among everyone that they're sort of just trapped, and they have been trapped for centuries here. And a very small percentage of people, like if you want to think about them like an army or something like that, or their scout cavalry kind of thing, will go
Mhm.
outside the city to scout. Um, but it's an extremely dangerous job, but people really respect and look up to them. But there hasn't been an attack or a sighting. Well, not that there hasn't been a sighting, but there hasn't been an attack by the Titans in years. So I think that's the basic idea.
Yeah.
But
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a good base. And yeah, again, I this might be worth watching before you continue with it, just so you can kind of see where this fits in context wise. They do a really great job with the first episode. So kind of talking about Trapped, I think we'll probably have a lot of good conversations with that. So we're going to watch our first clip.
Yep, watching the old gate we are. Thirsty work playing sentry. Pinochle only goes so far to chase off the boredom. Little nip now and then keeps us all in our courage for a spell. Perks of being a guard, eh?
How do you expect to fight if you're so loose on your feet?
Huh? Now why on earth would I have to fight?
What do you think? What if they break through the walls? We'd be sitting ducks on your watch!
Aaron, kid, please. Use your inside voice.
The Ducks kid has some fire in him. Listen, the only thing they've done to the wall in the past 100 years is scratch at it. I have the feeling if they get in their big heads to do something else, we'll be more than ready for them.
A feeling? What have any of you actually done to be ready for him? Dad says you've got to stay sharp!
Ah, good, Dr. Yeager. Yeah, well, can't argue with a man who single-handedly spared us from the plague. Hey, no disrespect to your father, but a soldier's time beyond the wall kind of tends to put the whole issue into a different perspective. You see him groping around out there, mindless, dead-eyed.
Wait a minute. Sounds to me like you don't even think that they're all that dangerous.
Eh.
Oh, great! Then at least have the decency to stop calling yourselves a garrison. People might get the wrong idea.
Good point. Look at it this way, huh? If a garrison's actually doing what people think it oughta, we're up a creek. Personally, I take a lot of stock in being called a freeloader. Means things are good. It's how I can measure peace of mind.
Good? We could live in a cage. All we do is eat and sleep. That's it. End of story. We have the peace of mind of livestock.
Man, you were right about the kid having fire.
Careful not to cry it out. You coming back to the game or what?
Yeah.
Huh? So a couple thoughts about that from me. One, I kind of like when Aaron's like, well, what if you have to fight? The guy's like, what? Why in the world would I have to do that? There's giants right outside of the wall.
Yeah, so they have this like relative sense of peace because like no one inside has had to deal with a Titan for years and years and years. So it like kind of makes sense, but at the same time you get where Aaron is coming from because he's like, well, if you did have to fight something, I don't know. I guess it's the same idea as like if you're not taking your job seriously in the real world.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good comparison job where you'd be like, maybe like just like a security guard at an office building or something, you know, like you're having a drink on the job. What if someone comes in and be like, well, who's going to come in here?
Yeah.
It's an office building.
Right.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think, there's so many parallels I think about. I think that's a good point I didn't think about, like you even just on your job. And, my brother, he place he was at, they kind of had this thing the workers would do where they'd take some money out of the till to like go buy something, but then they'd always pay it back.
Oh, sure. Yeah, honor system kind of thing, maybe.
Exactly. But there was some suspicious activity one day, and the higher ups were watching the recording, and just so happened that day my brother grabbed some money out of the teller, and so they were like, you're fired. So he got fired for it. And so yeah, just kind of keeping up your guard. And just like I think that can happen in so many other areas too. I mean, like people who get in accidents while drunk, I mean, they're like, that's fine, I got this is good. Or
they tell themselves that they're good to drive when they're really not,
Yeah. And I also kind of like the tension, because I felt this was probably a lot of tension between people like during COVID.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Hey, we're safe, we're good. But other people being like, but yeah, what cost?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a really good comparison. I hadn't thought of that because there's some people that are taking it ultra seriously, and in this case, it's this 10-year-old kid, right?
Yeah.
And there's this adult who's just like, come on, like this is not a big deal. And during COVID, you saw that all the time, people butting heads over
Right.
stuff, even if they were like family members or close
Yeah.
friends, and everyone was just on, they were super tense all the time, it felt like.
Hmm.
Yeah. Sort of from being, because
Right.
it was like being locked up in your house, it felt like during the lockdown.
Oh yeah.
You just felt like, I don't know. I felt like my anxiety levels were way higher, even though I was at home. Like,
Hmm.
if you had asked me before the pandemic, like, if you could work from home and have all this time to spend with your wife in between Zoom meetings and stuff, wouldn't that be great? And I'd be like, oh, sweet. It'd be like an at-home vacation every day. And
Yeah.
that was not the way it turned out to be at all. It turned out that I really valued all that face-to-face time with
Yeah.
my students as a teacher.
Mhm. Well, yeah, that made it tougher because you were a teacher during that time,
Yeah.
and I mean, I was thrusting teachers into this unknown territory. And even you could argue that too. I mean, I know there was a Bill Gates um, talk, I don't early 2000s about if the next pandemic comes, we're not going to be ready for it. And this
Sure.
was
Yeah.
like couple decades before it actually hit. And so, I mean, there's so much things that, I mean, as you see later on in the show, when the wall does break down,
Yeah.
it's done.
Yeah, and that it's that same guard during that scene where, and it turns out they sort of allude to it in this episode, but this guard has a relationship with this family, right? So he's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna save the mom, Aaron's mom, when she's trapped beneath this beam. I'm gonna save her from this titan that's looming over here that escaped through the wall. And he comes face to face with it, and you just see the fear on his face because all of a sudden he realizes I really didn't ever take this seriously or understand the consequences of what would actually happen. And he just grabs the two kids and runs. And the mom is thankful, but like you can tell he's ashamed because of his fear.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, because originally his mom was like, take the kids and run. And he's like, oh, there's a third option.
Yeah, I'll kill it and save you because of all you've done for me. No.
And when it first cut to him, I thought he got killed, but it was like, oh, it dawned. And I think you're right. I think that was the realization there of,
Yeah, I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
Got paralyzed with fear because he realized Aaron was right. I wasn't ready for this. And at that point, he's not drunk anymore. But even when he's sober, he realized this is way beyond what I was ready for.
It also is interesting, like, that he's a kid and like he somehow took that really seriously.
Yeah.
He'd never seen.
Right. Yeah.
And
so like that, I am trying to remember because I watched the whole thing, or at least everything that was out. I watched it so long ago, like more than 10 years ago. And it explores that somewhat. Like, what's his motivation or why does he feel that way?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it has to do with his relationships with the other characters. And I think partly some of the work that his dad does, but I can't 100% remember. So maybe I'll have to keep watching it again too. Yeah. But at the time I watched it, I don't even know if the anime is finished now at this point. I can't remember. I think it finished at least one of its main story arcs, but I had to go, me, not the anime guy. I had to go read the manga to figure out how it ended.
That's totally different. Manga.
Yeah, that's different. No. I feel like I'm our friend playing RPGs and then arguing that D&D is totally different than these other RPGs we're playing. I'm never going to go that far.
Yeah. As they go on, we didn't really get to see much of her. He's got this friend who at first I thought it was his sister, but now I'm like, oh, it's not his sister, it's a friend.
No, yeah.
And part of the reason I want to watch more of it is to figure out her backstory, because the next scene we're
I
going to
won't
watch,
spoil it.
there's a kid they rescued from getting bullied.
Yeah.
And
One of the other those are sort of the three main characters, Aaron and Mikasa, who's kind of like a sister character to him, and Armin, who's sort of, I don't know, a brother, younger brother, but also really good friend type character.
So Aaron is on the way. There's three bullies roughing him up. And I almost pulled this scene, but there's a good scene where he's like, "You're acting like brutes. I'm going to take the high road, and because of that, I've already won." And the bully is just, you can tell he's not computing. He's like, "Well, I'm a sore loser." About to fumble him again. Then Aaron's coming running towards him, like, "Hey, knock it off!" And the bullies are like, "Ha! I thought he'd learn this lesson." And then you see the girl next to him, and they're like, "Oh crap! Get out of here!"
Yeah.
So there's something there. So this is right after they save them, and they're having that conversation.
Oh, they just heard me rattling on about how mankind's future lay beyond the walls. Doubt they understood half of it, but still.
Idiots. Why's it gotta be this way? Why can't people just let us dream?
The walls are a powerful idea. We've survived for 100 years because of them. No one's keen on tempting fate. I may not agree with that sentiment, but I can see where they're coming from. It's human nature, Aaron. When all's said and done, the government's policies are a reflection of our fear.
Yeah, the rest of the herds maybe. I say to hell with them.
Someone's gonna hear you. Keep it down.
It's sad. What most people here are willing to settle for in exchange for some fleeting sense of security, you know? And make no mistake, it absolutely is fleeting. The walls can't hold forever. Only a matter of time.
There's part of me that's even scared to talk about it, but I feel this tension in America right now where, they're talking about all that is said and done. Government's policies reflect people's fears.
Sure.
And I feel like no matter what side you're on, they're going to see themselves in this.
Right.
So somebody who's maybe towards the left, seeing Aaron being like, "Oh, the hell with this. I'm not going to be part of the herd. It's like traditional values. Not going to go with the standard, like, here's how it's supposed to be."
Right.
And then somebody who's on the right side can look at this and be like, "Well, I'm Aaron. Freedoms is what's important, and not not moving away from those views." And I don't know. And this is why I like doing this, because we can talk about something that we're all very close to, but we can do it in a way that's non-threatening, like looking at this and asking the question, like, are the people who feel safe in these walls?
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah, and it's such a relatable feeling, especially nowadays, like you were saying. Like, it might have even been more relatable like 2-3 years ago, maybe. But it's like, it's sort of, yeah, like what you were saying, like, depending on what side you're on, whether you're on the current government side or you're in favor of a change or whatever, it's like these characters are struggling with a lot of the things that people in our country struggle with, and people around the world, really. Like we don't even have to keep it confined to America, right. But like, how much do they value their sense of security? And is that what's driving their decision making? And some people might say, like, even some of these characters might say, like, well, it's more than just a sense of security. It's like also protecting our way of life or that sort of thing. But like, Aaron very much is driven, like he's a dreamer, right? Like he's an idealist, and he's like, this is not the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And I need to change it. And to some degree, we're all kind of that way. Like we recognize, I think, as people, when things are not right or when things are not the way they're supposed to be. And everyone desires to change things, but we don't necessarily know how to go about doing it. And sometimes we almost I feel like I do this. I put my sense of security much higher on my priority list than I probably should a lot of times. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and it's tricky because in one sense, again, this is why I like talking about this, because, if I'm somebody in there, I'm hearing Aaron say this, my instinct would be like, well, what do you want me to do? You want me to try to go out and deal with those things?
Yeah, it's like I don't have the training to do that. Even the guys who are trained, like at the beginning of the episode, one of them comes back and it's literally only his arm that made it back,
Exactly. So it's like I'd love to expand beyond these walls, but we can't. And so I like that conflict where there is that stuff going on. And a couple of things I've liked at my new job. So I've been working with people in the community to help get jobs and stay and keep having jobs. I've been exploring a lot of new places, and I was checking out the neighborhood of one of my clients and trying to find places that maybe were hiring. And there was this grocery store called, I can't remember. It was like the Rising Sun or something like that.
Sure.
So I was like, oh, I'll check this out. I want to see what this is like, what kind of work they do, or if they're hiring. So I kind of went in, didn't really see any hiring stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to grab a pack of soda now I'm here. And as I'm kind of walking out, my brain's starting to tell me something. And it's not until I'm in line that I realize I'm the only white person there.
Oh,
everybody else was of Asian descent.
Sure.
And I kind of was looking around and I'm like, do they have this place? Is this their walls? Is this a place where they can feel safe because there is so much Asian aggression right now? And it kind of put me in another, put me on the other side of what somebody who isn't white may deal with a lot. And also kind of same thing. There's a pub I go to meet with the client, and I'll wait for them. And it's in the kind of inner city. So it's pretty diverse, but I'd say there's probably more, there's probably more Black people than any other race there. But one thing that's interesting is there's for me, for my culture, it's a little tense because people are just really they'll go talk to anyone. They'll be like, hey, I need that. Let me do this. And you're kind of like, man, this doesn't quite feel what I'm used to civil wise.
Right.
but there's so many deep connections there. I sat next to an old lady and 5 people stopped by and they're like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, that I don't have that at my Cub.
Yeah, right.
So just
we go into Cub and it's like, get in, get out, got what I need. Don't talk to anyone if you can help it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I feel has been my experience growing up. I feel like is when you go grocery shopping or you run an errand, it's like, this is not a time to fraternize. I'm just going to do my errand and keep my head down.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. But we could talk about that, the idea of the walls and in our culture or in our countries or whatever. But I feel like that's even true within myself, you know what I mean? It's so easy to just fall back on whatever our safety blanket is, I don't want to go out of my way to talk to this person because I feel uncomfortable, or I don't know, it could just be mentioning to someone in line at a grocery store, oh, I like that shirt. I recognize that we both have the same interest or whatever, but it's a lot easier to just stay inside of our own heads. And I feel like I do that to my detriment a lot of times. It would really benefit me mental health wise to get out of myself and actually talk to people You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like it's like we put up walls in our head too.
Yeah, that's I think a great point. I mean, I think that's me kind of pushing out of my walls when I'm in that community because I'm like, oh, this isn't what I used to. I also think yeah, I wasn't going to play it, but I might actually play one more clip really quick to kind of go with it, and I could describe it, but I think it's better to show. This is the scene where, most of the Titans, like Zack said, they're not very big. The wall's huge. They're little peons compared to it. So we're getting to kind of the climax of the episode, and it's pretty intense. So again, if you haven't watched it, spoiler alert. If you want to go see it first, stop it now. Come back later. You have been warned.
No, that's impossible. That wall's 50 meters high. Oh, God. It's a Titan.
Man, when I first saw that. But one thing I was thinking about is, we're talking about walls in your head, mental health stuff. Because for me, this is kind of a good representation of like when I had my breakdown. What I felt like there was a lot of other stuff going on, and I kind of had this wall up, like I'm going to get through it. I'm going to get through it. And then there was just this Titan that broke that wall down. And then all that fear, all that anxiety, everything just came in and just crashed my wall. And it was really intense.
Is that what prompted you to do something about it, or were you doing stuff about it before then?
I was doing some stuff before then. When I look back, I don't think I was doing enough.
Yeah.
It's, and to be fair to past me, I don't think I realized where it could go.
Sure.
I mean, just like these people had no idea this kind of Titan could show up.
Right. Yeah.
Like they were doing everything in what they felt in their power. So, and part of that was, really big things of, being in a super high stress job and having a son who had high medical needs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
But you can to go off what you're saying, like you can see the parallel too, because like that's what Aaron is so frustrated about even as a 10-year-old kid, because he and his friends specifically want to join the scouts when they get older because they feel like they're constantly living with this pressure around them. Even as kids they're feeling that, right?
Yeah.
And they want to do something about it. They don't exactly know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know. I feel like I went through similar things to you. I never had a son who had the needs that your son did, but in college, like when I went through similar types of mental health issues, like I didn't know that I didn't know it was wrong. You know what I mean? Like I had no context for it. And when I first started dealing with my mental health issues, like I just thought like, great, I'm like going insane, or I don't know what's wrong with me kind of thing. And sometimes when those things pop up, like you don't have the background knowledge or you don't have the context to know what you're supposed to do to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why you have all those tools and why we have support networks now, but we had to learn all those things kind of on the fly sometimes.
Right, exactly. I almost to parallel of that in here, everybody's like, yeah, Aaron's like, I want to go out there, it'd be great. And they could have showed, I wonder if they hadn't shown the soldiers come back, or if they like try to keep that a secret. But when you see the soldiers come in, like you said, I mean, they are battered, bruised.
Yeah.
And yeah, and again, like you said, there's one soldier who's the only thing is left is his arm. And quick side break here. What did you think about them giving it to his mom? Because I was torn on that. Part of me was
I was like, I don't have.
Fuck off! God damn!
Like, that is not what they would do in real life.
Right.
Like, they would bury his remains.
Yeah.
But they're not going to just like hand his remains to his mom in the street.
Yeah.
Right.
It felt almost one step away from like Toy Story, where he had Buzz's arm. He was like, hey, like your son's here. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. They were probably like somewhat hindered by their medium, I guess, because they're like, okay, we need to show like the shock value, I guess, of like how it feels like a lot of these people are without hope, because that mom like breaks down there and she's like, I just want to know that he died for a reason. And then that officer's like, I don't know. We haven't learned anything. We don't know how to deal with these. We don't know where they come from.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, I guess if you're like one of these kids like Aaron or Armin or Mikasa, like if you grow up and you're raised in an environment where the people you look up to, like you see them constantly not having answers to the things that you yourself are afraid of, like that messes you up as a kid, right? Like we look to our parents as people that are supposed to have everything figured out, right? And they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where I'm seeing, like, I think in our world, I think it's so healthy for people to show their battle wounds.
Sure.
So people, like, oh, this is tough. This is actually tricky. Because, yeah, if we didn't see those soldiers, you might think like, well, why not just go out there and deal with them? What's the problem? But we're like, oh, they try. It doesn't go well.
Yeah, and like from that perspective, it makes more sense why Aaron is so ticked off at those other guards, because he's like, we've seen the evidence of what's out there and why there actually is a threat. So these guards who are on duty are like, well, nothing's broken through the wall, but they're clearly not taking the real threat outside the wall very seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing I just felt watching through this, and it's just something I like acknowledging, that there's just tension in life. It's messy. Like you have all these different viewpoints. You have somebody who's like, no, let's take this serious, and you have soldier Garrett's who are like, yeah, the fact that we can drink, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If guys are coming in just wound and just it's messy.
It is.
And I think that's what makes this really cool, that they're not trying to just make it easy and stuff. So
yeah, so like one final thought from me is like, when I was thinking about like what show to pick to make you watch, and I was like, oh, I watched this 10 years ago. This was a great one. And I had a student who was like, Mr. P, you have to go watch this because I'll work really hard on my project if you do. And I was like, you should work hard on your project anyway. But I was like, oh, yeah, I remember watching that. This would be a good one to make Joe watch.
Oh, nice.
And then I watched it and I was like, man, it's hard for me to watch stuff like this now. It's just like, man, like we talk about TV shows and other forms of media as a form of escapism, but like this one and other ones, like I struggle to watch some drama type things on Netflix or other services or whatever, because they're just like too relatable to me, you know? Like I don't always want that messiness
Yeah.
bleeding into my escapism time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's
I
another example of a wall that I need to work through.
Well, it's the old, like, I remember when Rachel and I were first married and we went to this church and they were talking about your spouse and how, you're, as a spouse, you should be doing this. And I was like, I sure hope Rachel's listening. And at the end, the pastor goes, now, if you're thinking your spouse should be hearing this, that's God's way of telling you you need to hear
You
this.
should probably be listening.
That was, ooh,
yeah.
So I have 3 questions I ask everybody at the end
Sure.
of the session. A little tailored, a little different for each media. So first question, which clip did you think was the most impactful or intense or dramatic? However you want to answer that.
Yeah. Well, knowing what happens in the show later, without spoiling anything, I think maybe that second clip, because, well, both of them really were good choices because they get at a lot of the themes of the show. And again, without spoiling anything, they really sort of already give you a glimpse of how the 3 main characters evolve, kind of, and how their character arcs go, which are not necessarily what you would expect. But I like that second clip, I think, the most because it did sort of make me reflect, especially in our conversation, and struggle with when we feel trapped, how do we deal with that, or how should we deal with that? And it's messy, but maybe a more positive way, I guess, of saying, rather than saying messy, is like people are messy, but people are also nuanced. Like I think it was a college professor who used to say, people are stupid, but a person is smart, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a Men in Black line. Person smart, people dumb, stupid.
There you go. That's the one.
Yeah, I think mine was the first one where Aaron was talking to the guards, because there's just such just seeing like his passion, and then I mean, again, I think coming in knowing what's going to happen probably impacts this, and just how like desensitized the guards have been, and just and there's this, I was expecting this main guard who was talking to him to kind of like swat him or do something, but in the end he kind of understood him,
right? And he almost like starts feeling guilty, kind of.
Yeah. So I don't know, I just felt like there was a lot of depth to that. Next question is, what clip did you take the most out of that you felt like you were able to learn a lot or saw more connections than you thought you would have?
Sure. I think, which one did I get the most connections out of? Probably the second clip again, but they weren't necessarily like comfortable connections. Yeah. Like, again, like that's that idea where like, I'm watching things because I want to escape thinking about some of these things.
Right.
But sometimes it's healthy for us to think about those things. Otherwise, we never deal with them. So,
yeah. I'd agree with you. I think, there was a lot to take in. And I mean, you do see that, in our day and age, there was the wall that was trying to be built, that was clearly in reflection of people's fears.
Right. We're not keeping out Titans in that case, but it was definitely a reflection of people's fears.
Right. Exactly. And so it's just, I think took more, and it always seems to be those clips where I'm like, is this enough substance to talk about? And then when we watch and we talk about it, I'm like, oh yeah, there's always way more depth than I would have thought.
Yeah.
Final question is, if we had to pick one of the clips we've watched and do a deep dive, dig in even further, which clip would you choose?
I'm gonna say, instead of answering that, Joe, I'm gonna say maybe you should just go watch episode 2. Maybe you just got to go binge some Attack on Titan.
Well, I probably will, but
well, honestly, like, I don't know. I wish maybe we should have deep dived. I don't necessarily want to watch, spoiler alert, his mom getting eaten again, but like thinking about the emotions in that scene would be a good idea. Not necessarily his mom getting eaten, but that whole sequence with the guard going to try to rescue her and then realizing I'm not prepared, which is already what that first scene, I guess, that we looked at was sort of getting at. Seeing like, oh, he's feeling guilty because he really isn't that prepared. And then he actually gets in that situation and we see, yep, he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
But he did save the kids, so that's something. I suppose.
Yeah. Of the clips we watched, would there be anyone you'd want to do a deep dive on? Or are you creating a new answer for yourself?
I'm creating a new answer.
Okay.
I'm altering the rules.
It's always a first for everything.
That's right. It's me, the anime guy.
I might have to title this Joe Time with Zack, not the anime guy.
That's right.
So
not the anime guy.
So I'll play by your rules. If we're gonna go that route,
we're going that route. What are you choosing?
I think I think I would just kind of rewatch them breaking in again.
Yeah, that's like that iconic scene that people know Attack on Titan for when the hand is just on the wall. You're like, oh no, stuff is about to go down.
Exactly. And just how quick things can change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's done so well where it's just like just feel your heart drop.
Mm-hmm.
And it's dawning on you like, that's it. This town's done.
Yeah.
It's over. And just, looking at that at life, when somebody's diagnosed with cancer or somebody's in a fatal car accident, that's it. It's done.
Yeah,
There's
like all of a sudden, what was your reality? Upside down. Totally different than it was before.
Okay, so that kind of wraps this up. Zach, if people listen to this episode and they're like, man, this guy's pretty cool, I'd love to send him a friend request. Is that okay? And what social medias are you on?
I have my own YouTube channel where I review anime. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm on most of the things. I don't really look at Twitter/X, but I'm active on Discord and Facebook.
Yeah. Another thing you can always do, this should be on YouTube if you want to leave a comment too.
There you go. That's the best way. Do it that way.
For me, I have a second podcast called Two Voices, One Story. It's with my wife, Rachel. We talk about personal difficulties that we've gone through and just kind of an inside look of mental health and struggles. With that wraps up this episode. Zach, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I'll do it again sometime if you'll have me.
Oh, yeah. We'll do round 2 with everybody.
Awesome.
All right. Well, keep watching those shows, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Subscribe.